Hey, community, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, I'm Dr. Blaire, a doc in clinical psychology. And on this channel, we discuss psychology, inspiration, social justice, and all topics in between. First things first, hit that subscribe and bell button. You know, I want to see you back next week. And of course, stay tuned because we're going to start a new topic today around emotional spending. Keep watching. All right, so let's jump into it. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about emotional spending, and you already know if I'm glancing away or down, I'm checking my notes. So, emotional spending, we've all heard the term before, likely, but if you have not, spending money during emotionally provoked moments to soothe emotional pain is what emotional spending is. I'll read that again. Emotional spending is spending money during emotionally provoked moments to soothe emotional pain. And if you haven't, kind of put two and two together, you probably have heard of retail therapy or spending money when you're around others, even based off of memories. And I'm really gonna break down those a few things. But with emotional spending, of course, there are an array of dangers. But I really want to talk about the different type of emotional spendings, or the ones that I see the most. The top three, I've narrowed it down to. So three top of emotional type of spending, and also the dangers that come along with this. And I feel like many of us already know what the dangers are when it comes to spending money based off of how you feel, especially when you've heard me say over and over and over again that to respond out of emotion at times can be dangerous, especially when how you feel in that moment may not be how you feel the next moment. In fact, as you know, I always want to tie in the Word of God. The Bible clearly tells us that the heart can be deceiving. And for many of us, we consider that our emotions, our feelings, the way that things make us feel really come from our heart. And of course, it's not this physical heart, but is this figurative type of heart, the soul. It's coming from places of our soul. And so it can be deceiving. It can guide us the wrong way. And part of that is because how we feel today, right now, in this very hour, as I'm recording this, I might not feel after I finish. And so the same can be for you. And I'm pretty sure we all can draw out experiences where our emotions may have weighed, or they may have been on a scale, a spectrum, or have shifted at some one point in time. And so making decisions based off of how you feel also can be dangerous, simply because it may not be a wise decision. I might be angry in class, but responding out of my anger toward my instructor might not be the wise decision. Instead, I might need to practice some anger management. I might be gravely sad by the fact that I have not been able to accomplish a certain thing, but if I sit in that sadness for too long, and it ends up pulling me down even more, it might help me to avoid and or deter me from actually completing the task that I need to do. And see how our emotions sometimes can work against us if we respond out of emotion. And so I believe it's important, and I've said this in plenty of videos before, I'll say it again because I stand on this principle. It's important to acknowledge how you feel. However, there comes a deliberation. There comes a time where you need to sit, you need to ponder, and make some decisions as to how you are to then respond. Two different things. So with all of that being said, let's go down a very short list of different types of emotional spending. And I already said retail therapy. All right, so let's break this one apart. Retail therapy, we've heard the term before, where you are going to shop so that you can have some type of cathartic or emotional release. That is literally what retail therapy is. In fact, some people now want to package retail therapy as self-care. Go ahead, have some retail therapy. Treat yourself, right? So I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. However, retail or shopping cannot replace therapy. I'll say that again. Retail and shopping and hitting up Target, going over to Amazon online, going to the candle store and Bath and Body Works, getting out every single scent that you like. That is not a replacement or a substitute for actual therapy. Okay. And so what ends up happening is when people engage in retail therapy for the sake of self-care, without consideration of actually addressing the thing that they need this therapeutic or emotional release from, it can be dangerous because it actually turns into an avoidance tactic instead of the very thing that you're hoping that it is being used for. So it really requires some honest evaluation with yourself and setting up boundaries with yourself and with others as it pertains to retail therapy. Using therapy very lightly here because it's not actually that. Maybe I'm a bit biased because, been a therapist. Anyways, so retail therapy. Next is social spending. And this comes in when you're around a group of people and they are spending, they're getting things. And so I'm going to do it too. This same concept happens with social drinking, where some people may drink alcoholic beverages a bit more when they notice that they're around other people who are doing it. And so this is not just kind of going with the larger group, but this becomes a lot more problematic when people don't have the money to spend and or are only doing it because of other people. And so there's this assimilation process where you are essentially just kind of following the wind of everything else that's around you. um, that's problematic in a lot of different ways. I won't get into that because that'll take this conversation a different way, but I want you to pay attention to, are you a social spender? Are you spending because you are seeing other people do it? Now, a lot of people may think, well, how exactly does that happen when a lot of shopping is actually occurring online? This is true, and it can happen there too. This means that if you're having conversation with a friend or with an associate, and they say, "Oh yeah, I got this thing off of Amazon, this little gadget, and it is so good. I really like it. Here you go." Tip, 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 click, 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 click on your computer, on your phone, and you're looking for the exact same gadget that you really don't need. I mean, how many forms of a blender, food processor, juicer do we really need? How many more appliances do we really need? We already have a potato peeler. You don't need another one that does it like this with your entire hand to go into this container. And my point is that social spending is not just an in-person interaction. It happens virtually. It happens, the same concept can happen even if you're not doing the spending as a group. Next is probably the hardest one. It is the hardest one to pay attention to, and it may be the hardest to actually end because it brings up a lot of emotions from the past, and that is nostalgic spending. It's the process to exactly, buy items or things that remind you of a past experience. Now, contrary to experience or even people, contrary to popular belief, this is actually something that you can do whether the experience or that person may evoke emotions that are positive and even negative emotions. Yes, you can still indulge in nostalgic spending as it pertains to negative emotions and reactions to people or experiences that are from the past. And it may be like a face twister, like, what? Yes, it is possible. And so this is where unhealed wounds, I don't want to say trauma, but unhealed wounds can really pull on people to do or be in a cyclical pattern where they're unable to break, where they're doing things that are actually harmful to themselves, even as it pertains to pulling on this wanting to recreate memories that are actually not very helpful for you. And this is, I'm saying that I don't want to say trauma because that isn't always a trauma response, but a lot of the time it is. So if I had a pie chart, I would, put it on the screen for you. I'm not that fancy yet. It's coming. All right. So, question: have you ever partaked in any one of these types of spending? Nostalgic spending, retail therapy, social spending? If so, drop it in the comments. I'm not ashamed to say I absolutely have. I think I've done all 3. I'm pretty sure I have done all 3. And let me tell you how simple it can be. Nostalgic spending could simply be, oh my goodness, I used to have that when I was a little girl. I really want that. Oh my goodness, this reminds me of my aunt, my great aunt. It smells just like her. I'm gonna get it. Now again, all of these types of spendings don't have to be bad, but like many things in life, when you overindulge in one thing, it actually starts to get into the dangers and the underlying issues that are there. So what are those things? When you do this type of spending, it is temporary. Remember, this is all in response to how you are feeling emotionally. It is to soothe emotional pain. And so if you're doing this consistently, it is temporary. Your pain is not actually gone. It's the same as taking an ibuprofen, and the next thing you know, what went from a dull discomfort is boom, a sharp pain. But that's what actually the pain is. That medicine, all it does is send signals to certain parts of our brain to silence and or hover the pain so that you are not feeling the pain. Your brain doesn't tell your body that you are in pain in a particular area. It doesn't mean that it's gone. It doesn't take it away. It's still there. It is still there. All right. It's temporary. 2, it can lead to financial problems. I've seen plenty of people, patients that I worked with, and even people in my personal life. I've actually experienced, like I said, I've done all 3 of these before. This is not just I'm not pointing the finger, y'all. I'm saying this is a us thing. Remember what we do. It's between us, right? Financial can bring the financial problems. If you continue to overindulge in any of these types of spending, you end up being in the red, in the negatives, and well, I don't think I need to explain why that's not helpful. Now, if I need to explain it, that's all right, I will. But I think I'd probably prefer to bring on a financial person who really sees that on a day-to-day basis. I'm not a financial expert, but it leads to financial problems that you're ending up spending money that you should not be spending in areas that are not of need. And so this is where, you've got a large pot of money, you spend it on your priorities, but instead you're supposed to spend it on what you need. And what you need and your priorities may not always align. And number 3, it increases guilt and shame. Now let me just pause right here. When we all experience guilt and or shame, this is a very difficult emotion to overcome, because it's really sometimes it's about yourself. And when the guilt and shame is coming from yourself, it's kind of like you can't really escape you because you're always with you, even though people try to escape themselves all the time. It's not possible. And the issue here is, bringing up feelings of regret is that now that you've gotten into this pattern of doing it and you're overindulging and it's now spearing off into other issues that you're going to have to deal with, now you have this extra added negative emotion around guilt, shame, regret, on top of what you were already feeling that you were indulging in this behavior for in the first place, which was already an emotional pain. And so now you've almost doubled what was much smaller at first. And so it becomes counterproductive. Long story short, it becomes counterproductive and you give yourself an additional problem. This is the same concept that happens when someone who is working to overcome substance use or substance dependence, that when we don't do that consistently and we overindulge in that with the thought that we're going to silence out this emotional pain. Well, now not only do I have this unaddressed emotional pain, but I also have this addiction. We're going to talk about addiction to food soon, but guilt, shame, regret, it brings on a lot of that feelings. And so you keep yourself in this cycle of, I feel bad, I want to feel better for a short while, and I create more problems for myself. Oh, actually now I feel guilty for doing it. And you go deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. And what you don't want to do is go so deep into a hole that no one has a ladder that's long enough or tall enough to pull you out. Or that you're so deep in a hole, you can't get yourself out. And it ends up exhausting your resources that you have readily available to you. Lastly, unaddressed deeper emotional problems or wounds. And I've kind of talked about this throughout the entire time. When you do this too much, these problems here that I talked about actually never get addressed. And so what you're wanting to soothe is never soothed. And again, let's bring up this ibuprofen example. Pain is actually still there. So what are the solutions? And they're very simple solutions. Granted, I realize there are nuances to each of these solutions, but for the sake of not keeping you here forever on this video, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The first one is recognizing it. You can't do anything without recognizing the problem is a problem, right? How could you? Because you don't see it. But when you recognize it, when you start to pay attention to, am I emotionally spending? And if so, in what way and why? Then you get to a place where you're recognizing it. And then you can shift into the next phase of actually addressing it. Oh my goodness, if we can count how many times I've said address it in a video, I'm sure the number will be large, but address it, address this thing, address this blob. It can be daunting, but I assure you, you engaging in these other behaviors, creating more problems, going deeper and deeper into this cycle is much larger of a blob than this. So take your pick, larger blob, smaller blob. It's up to you. I mean, you're grown. This is your decision. These are your decisions for your life. But I recommend addressing it. And 3, this is where you have to put to rest and kill the cycle. And yes, I use the word kill very strongly. You're going to have to kill this cycle because you don't want it to be resurrected. You don't want it to come back. You don't want to just silence it for a little while and then it gains up momentum to rise up again on you. You have to kill it so that it doesn't come back in your life, which means you have to make a huge decision. Do I want to change this about me? Do I want to stop this behavior? And if so, what will I be replacing it with? What is a lot more helpful for me? And those are questions I can't necessarily answer with you or go back because we're not responding to each other. But I instead would definitely recommend you seek some professional help if that is needed. Seek some wise counsel. Go to someone that you know is very strong in this area. Go to someone that you know can assist you and be honest with you. And that means that you're going to have to be open to some harsh truths. And I hope that they can deliver it in a way that doesn't feel like it's judgmental. But when people are giving harsh truths, you may feel like you're being judged. And it's important to remember and prepare yourself that we have to have some hard conversations when it comes to these behaviors. Yeah. And if you can have it with yourself, then that pat on the back about that. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. This is all worth it because you're worth it. And so I pray that each of you really take a close assessment to see, is this an area that needs to be addressed, even in the smallest ways? If you are engaging in this behavior, why are you avoiding addressing the emotions that you're feeling? All right, so I'm going to stop here and allow that to settle. I hope I see you in the comments down below, and or of course, feel free to give me a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and of course here on YouTube. I'm also on Clubhouse. I hope to see you on any another platform, but of course my truest hope and prayer is that some of this is landing and planting a seed somewhere for it to grow and flourish. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your community, and be sure to share with someone specific who needs to hear a little bit more about emotional spending. And of course, before you go, and I see you next time, if I'm great and you're great, then we're a great community.